injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Hey, it feels incredible.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by Burger and Hicks. You can always DM Burger and Hicks on Instagram. Check out their TikTok page, everything. Get a free consultation, free anything you need there for your first call there at Burger and Hicks, and we have the number at the bottom. But we do have a great episode for you guys watching here tonight as we are joined by Josh Nelson of Sox Machine to talk about a little bit of the little merger between the White Sox and the Marlins and in terms of players and everything going on with both teams the past year. Josh, it's great to have you on.
Hey, it's great to be on. I really enjoy your guys' Marlins coverage. You guys have been crushing it. The Miami Marlins are an interesting team, not only just last year and the run that they had to making the postseason and shocking everyone, especially in Chicago. There are Cubs fans that do not like the Marlins right now. Very jealous and jaded what happened at the end of the season. But when we're looking at the National League, 6 teams are going to make the postseason. And everybody knows about the Braves and the Dodgers and the Phillies. I think a lot of people are still overlooking the Marlins and making the postseason. I think they could still be a sneaky pick and make it the postseason back-to-back year. So I'm going to be watching a lot of Marlins baseball this year, and for good reason, as there's some old friends, as we like to say, at Sox Machine that are currently on this Miami roster.
And before we go ahead and talk about these old and new friends joining us, let's talk about a little bit about who else we have here on the stream. We have Kevin Barral, we have Eli Sussman, we have Isaac Azut also joining us. I'm Daniel Rodriguez to talk about all things Marlins, and well, today will be Sox as well. And of course, let's talk in the beginning. The first player that comes to mind right now, Tim Anderson, who just signed a 1-year, $5 million deal with the Marlins, will be the starting shortstop for the Fish coming on this season. But with Tim Anderson comes with a lot of, what can happen there? Injuries, play defensively, and even the bat, as last year was one of the worst seasons you could say for a baseball player. And for Tim Anderson last season, where he ranked in the bottom half in terms of offensive numbers, defensive numbers, but looks to bounce back with the Fish. And Josh, what are the Marlins getting with Tim Anderson?
That's a great question. I wish I had a definitive answer for you, because since 2022 Memorial Day, Tim Anderson has been a negative WAR player. And it has been quite shocking in the regression that happened in the south side of Chicago for Tim Anderson. Prior to the 2023 season, I thought the White Sox should have negotiated a contract extension with Anderson. He was coming off a 2-WAR season. And like I mentioned, after Memorial Day, late May 2022, he was a 0-WAR player. He really struggled with injuries, but to start the year, he was one of the best players in all of Major League Baseball. He was a 2-WAR player after the first 2 months of the season and looked like he could be competing or contending to be a starting shortstop in the All-Star game for the American League. But as you mentioned, the lower half injuries have really built up over the years for Tim Anderson. It's been a groin injury. It's been an MCL injury. And the way that the White Sox were trying to make the 2021 magic happen again in 2022, of course, that didn't happen. They finished 500. And Jose Abreu leaves, and Tim Anderson took it upon himself to be the clubhouse leader. And when you struggle to start the season, and the team really struggles to start the season, they went like 7-20 in the month of April. The outside noise starts coming in. And we keep hearing piece by piece of what was actually happening within the clubhouse for the White Sox. And it became very fractured. And we keep hearing about clicks. And there's even some rumors that it got so bad that Tim Anderson's locker was not even in the White Sox clubhouse. So it got bad. And what the Marlins are getting for $5 million, I think, is a player who is seeking redemption. And I think this is a good opportunity to get away from the noise from Chicago and the failures of the entire organization. It's just not Tim Anderson. The entire organization failed to excel during their contention window. And like you mentioned, Tim Anderson was one of the worst position players in all of Major League Baseball, if not the worst position player in Major League Baseball. And he's looking to prove himself once again. And I think it all starts at the plate, guys, in that road to redemption for him.
And with Tim Anderson, I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit also, maybe his defensive numbers, because I can imagine you've seen the games there. You've probably seen almost every inning he's been at with the White Sox. And Eli and I had a podcast about it today where he ranked -16 in defensive run saves, the worst infielder in terms defensively in baseball. But Josh, did that just come with him getting injured last season with his knee? Or do you believe that Tim Anderson maybe might not cut it out long-term, shortstop with the fish? Or do you just see it as more as a struggle for Tim Anderson last year defensively?
Anderson's always been known as an athletic shortstop. His level of athleticism, being a former high school basketball player, gives him great range at the shortstop position. That's what the White Sox are always hoping for, is that he could be someone that could steal base hits moving to his left and to his right. And the White Sox had that for a while. Before Anderson, they had Alexei Ramirez, who demonstrated very good range. The problem with Anderson's always been consistency. He has the flair of making fantastic defensive plays, especially when he's leaping for liners hit at the shortstop position. He can go up and get them. And he's made some great plays that way. He's made great plays moving to his right. Where Tim Anderson struggles the most is moving to his left. And as we see with the highlight here, coming in, especially on slow rollers, a couple hops, infield in, Anderson always struggled with those types of plays, whether he is just thinking too fast and moving too fast and his body is not in control, where he doesn't even field the ball. And if he does field the ball, Anderson's always had really poor throwing mechanics on the run, and he never figured that part out. And that's been one of the aggravating things covering the White Sox is like, is there one coach in this organization that could teach someone how to throw on the run? Anyone. I mean, Tim Anderson's been in the organization. He's a first-round draft pick for you guys. Nobody could teach him on how to throw better on the run. And again, it's another example of the White Sox organizational failure to help out Tim Anderson in that regard defensively. I don't know the defensive value that Anderson's going to bring to the Miami Marlins. If the Miami Marlins were looking for a defensive shortstop, I would just figure they'd stick with Xavier Edwards and just bat him ninth and understand that he may not be a major league hitter, but defensively hopefully can hold his own at that position. But in order for Anderson to provide not too much negative value, I would say that Skip Schumacher and the entire Marlins coaching staff, they're going to have to work on his ability coming in, give up on the moving to the left side just for a moment. If he can do a better job coming into slow rollers and grounders or even bunts that get past the pitcher and field those cleanly and make better throws on the run, then you're going from a shortstop that was worth -16 defensive runs saved. If he's -6 defensive runs saved, that's still well below league average shortstop defensively, but that's a big jump in defensive value for Tim Anderson. So I think that would be the goal and what I would focus on coaching up Anderson. Then again, he's 31 years old coming into the season, so I wouldn't expect much defensively.
Yeah, I know nationally the enduring memory of him, aside from the fight, before the fight, and will endure after him, is the Field of Dreams game walk-off home run. Is that from the White Sox perspective, there was a lot of years and a lot of good times. Is that the moment that sticks out above all else, or are there other things that you think really well represent who he was as a player that from all those years of success?
I mean, that is the highlight for Tim Anderson during his White Sox tenure. All White Sox fans remember that. They remember where they were and just how awesome and cool of a moment that was for Tim Anderson. Covering Tim Anderson, what I will always remember is the way that he bounced back. In his second season, his best friend was murdered, and it weighed on him heavily during the entire season. And we were having serious questions, even though he hit 17 homers that season. He had a 2.1% walk rate. He was striking out still almost 27% of the time. Defensively, he looked like a mess. We were wondering, is this guy even a major leaguer? And he was able to overcome that loss. And he just had a renewed sense of focus in 2018, where he started picking pieces of the game that he really struggled. He had a terrible time against sliders. All of a sudden, he's hitting sliders. Defensively, he really hunkered down and started correcting many of the mistakes that he had. I mean, in 2017, I think he was worth like almost negative 20 defensive runs saved. And the following season, he was in the positive. So we've seen him make these big adjustments. And then, I mean, his marquee years was 2019 to 2021, in which Tim Anderson, I believe, was a top 10 shortstop in all of Major League Baseball. That's 3 consecutive seasons hitting better than 300. His weighted runs created plus in 2019 was 128. In the shortened 2020 season, he was 140. He was a top 10 MVP candidate in the American League, even though his teammate Jose Abreu won the award. And in 2021, he was a 118 weighted runs created plus. So he was a far above average league hitter, and he was pulling the ball still, and he can hurt you with the home run like the Field of Dreams game. But ever since 2022, a lot of those attributes that made Tim Anderson scary at the plate have gone away. He stopped looking to pull the ball. He stopped looking to hit the ball with authority and power. He was settling or aiming to hit singles up the middle or to right field. And I would really like to see if the Marlins can get him back to his 2021 form, because if they can offensively get Anderson back to his 2021 form, guys, this is a great signing for $5 million. Like, yeah, give me a 115 weighted runs created plus shortstop at the plate. I mean, that's a bargain. Teams would love to have that type of efficiency offensively for that little money.
I mean, even if you do get 2021 Tim Anderson, 2022 Tim Anderson wasn't that bad either. I mean, the guy's still a 2-WAR player, 110 WRC plus, 15% strikeout rate, the lowest of his career. And I know it's not the same Tim Anderson we saw in, that stretch of 2019, 2021, but it's still over 300 hitting over 300, still getting on base. I mean, essentially that's all Miami really needs at shortstop. And that's a huge upgrade compared to what, they had in Joey Wendell last season, John Birdie, who, moves around everywhere. It just isn't a clear shortstop. And I guess now Xavier Edwards, we'll see where he pans out. So this is a huge upgrade, even if you do get that 2022 Tim Anderson, which, you would love to get at least that 2021 guy, but 2022, not that bad either.
Well, again, that's why I brought up Memorial Day. If you look at his numbers from opening day to Memorial Day, they are amazing. And that's why it was 2-WAR. After Memorial Day, he was batting in the low 200s. The BABIP crashed. The groin injury was playing a much larger factor in his swing, where he could not get his hips through the zone. He lost all power. And I think he forced himself to play because the American League Central was so bad, and the White Sox had a little glimpse of hope of making the postseason in September of that season, that Anderson was just trying to gut through and help the team make the postseason. And you could just tell he didn't have it. Like, you knew that he was hurt. And that was the thing about like last year too, is like, oh man, Anderson's looking to bounce back. And then Hanser Alberto lands on the side of his knee in a dumb rundown in Minneapolis. So just compounding the problems. They don't even get the out. And now Anderson is hurt with the knee injury. So it's been a lot of bad luck the last couple of years, injury wise, for Anderson. But Eli, to come back, like Anderson's biggest moment as you guys see on the screen, it's still the Field of Dreams homer. I think I have the bobblehead up in the bookshelf for that home run. And I mean, the way that Jake Berger hit for you guys became an instant cult hero. It wouldn't surprise me if Anderson has a similar moment in Miami in 2024.
Well, I think you just shifted perfectly for us right there, going from Tim Anderson to talk a little bit about Jake Berger and the trade that happened at the deadline last year. Jake Berger going to the Marlins for Jake Eder. Josh, with Jake Berger, obviously we haven't seen him in a full season with the Fish, but when you did see him there with the White Sox, and he was just starting to get that majority of playing time, playing every day for the White Sox, just what did you see from him, and how do you think that he can go for the Marlins for a full season? What is the ceiling for Jake Berger?
Yeah, that's a really good question, what his ceiling is, because the version of Jake Berger that we saw was maximum swing velocity as possible. Like the strikeout rate, he didn't care if he struck out. I mean, his on-base percentage was 279. His batting average was 214. I do a weekly segment on 670 The Score in Chicago talking about the White Sox. Nobody at that radio station believed what they were seeing from Jake Berger. Everybody would argue with me that this is not sustainable. And the point that I was trying to make is, yeah, Jake Berger can hit for better contact, but when he does make contact, I mean, he is just crushing the baseball. He had 25 homers for the White Sox in 88 games. He actually finished second for White Sox hitters in 2023 in homers. And I thought maybe he could be like a Rob Deere kind of player for those that are on the older side. If you remember who Rob Deere was, Rob Deere would strike out in today's baseball 250 times easily, but he could probably hit 30 plus homers. Like he was just swinging for the fences. And that's what Jake Berger was doing. I don't know what the Miami Marlins did when Jake Berger got there, but nobody in Chicago saw a 303 batting average, a 860 OPS, didn't see this type of walk rate, this type of on base percentage in like 50 some games for the Marlins. Like he just looked more of a complete hitter. I will say defensively, he's going to be limited. The Marlins are going to try him at third. Is that the plan this season?
Yeah, primary third baseman, maybe occasionally backup at first. And now what they've done is they have kind of a vacant DH spot. So he'll get more half days off as DH too.
Got it. Yeah. What I was always concerned about is I remember watching that spring training game where Jake hit a slow roller in the infield and he was trying to impress his team. I think it was his first spring training, and he hustled out of the box, and you could just see instantly there was something wrong as he collapsed to the ground before getting to first base. We thought it was an ACL tear, but tearing his Achilles, and then while he's rehabbing, walking in his backyard, that same Achilles heel tears again. So having that happen twice, I had serious doubts that Jake Berger was going to reach the major leagues. And he talked about that during his time with the White Sox, like some of the mental issues that he had to overcome just to get to where he is today. And that's what makes it so easy to root for Jake Berger. And it does warm my heart on how you guys, for the Marlins and Marlins fans, how quickly you've embraced Jake Berger, because White Sox fans loved Jake Berger and he was this great redemption story. And he has shown better athleticism than expected, especially for a guy that's torn his Achilles twice and his body size. I think long-term, he's probably more likely a first baseman. But if Jake Berger if these are the numbers for the Marlins that he had last year, if this is sustainable, I mean, 162 game pace is like what, 40 doubles, 25, 30 homers, and he hits above 300. Every team in Major League Baseball needs a Jake Berger. The Chicago White Sox desperately need a bat like Jake Berger. So I'm glad that he's with the Marlins. I'm glad that he found success. But boy, this trade between the White Sox and Marlins that was made by Kenny Williams, who's no longer with the organization and was fired a couple weeks after this trade. sour taste in White Sox fans' mouths right now, especially in how poorly things went for Jake Eder when he joined the White Sox organization.
Right. I have to admit, Josh, when this trade went down, I personally wasn't a huge fan of it. I thought great 5 years of control with Jake Berger, but you're giving up at the time, which was what was Miami's biggest trade asset in Jake Eder. I don't know how sustainable that 2-month stretch was for Jake Eder, for Jake Berger. I don't know how sustainable that's going to be for the rest of his Marlins tenure, but I'm just curious what your initial reaction to that trade was. You saw you were getting Jake Eder. He's coming off surgery. He's one of the best pitching prospects in a pitching field system. I was just curious at the time of the trade, what your reaction was.
My reaction was that the White Sox don't think Berger was ever going to hit for contact, that they thought they were selling high on Berger and trying to cash in at the deadline someone that's hit 25 homers. And the White Sox probably didn't think that was sustainable. And like instant egg on face in that trade, be like, oh no, he can hit for contact and still, show some power. Maybe it's more doubles than the home runs that we were seeing, because he only had like 15 doubles to his 25 homers during this time with the White Sox. But if Jake Berger's a more well-rounded hitter with the Marlins, because they made some adjustments with him, again, another organizational failure. Of course, the White Sox fired their hitting coaches after the 2023 season. This could be a trade for the White Sox where this ages really poorly, because to pull somebody else into this conversation, and I've been doing this a lot, the White Sox have Andrew Vaughn. And Andrew Vaughn is an undersized first baseman that was taken 3rd overall. And Andrew Vaughn has yet to put up a season anywhere close to the 2023 season Jake Berger put up. And I have more confidence that Berger can especially hit for above average power in Major League Baseball to be that guy that could anchor a lineup and hit 30 plus homers. I'm just not seeing it with Andrew Vaughn. And there's some severe flaws in Andrew Vaughn's game at the plate, especially his inability to hit a slider, that makes me think he's never going to be that guy. Where Jake Berger, I think he could still be that guy. And I think he should bat 3rd in the Marlins lineup. Maybe you guys have a better understanding of the lineup and you may differ. Defensively, though, I don't think he's going to be a great asset at the hot corner. So it's going to be really interesting to see Tim Anderson and Jake Berger on the left side of that infield.
Yeah.
But I'm confident that Berger will continue to hit in 2024.
Yeah, you mentioned the defense. It's going to be fascinating now with obviously Anderson coming. John Birdie could, hypothetically move over to third base and Jake Berger get a lot of time at DH, and where that maybe helps his offense out even more.
Yeah. And the more I think about it, it's like, man, a ball hit into the middle between Tim Anderson and Jake Berger. But you know what? Those two had a good relationship in Chicago.
Yeah.
Those two guys enjoyed their time. That's why it didn't surprise me that Jake Berger was campaigning for the Marlins to sign Tim Anderson. So we'll see. I think positioning is going to be key. The way that the Marlins coaching staff has Anderson and Berger positioned, that will matter a whole lot more to hopefully use that advanced film watching and using the defensive StatCast metrics and the zone charts for the opposing hitters to make sure that they're in better position. Because that was another thing with the White Sox that we always complained about, especially Tony La Russa stuck with his old ways. It's like the White Sox didn't believe in that type of stuff. So just continue to stay in one particular area of the infield. And they really didn't shift guys around all that much. So I'm wondering if that will change with the Marlins to help out with some of their defensive shortfalls.
And Josh, you had mentioned obviously Andrew Vaughn's shortcomings at the plate so far, and I'm really curious because you do drafts as well, like you mentioned before we got on the air. That 2019 draft was so interesting to me. When the White Sox got Andrew Vaughn, I was very upset because I thought he was the safest bet in that draft by far, obviously besides Rutschman and Witt. And when obviously that made Miami go to Bleday Jr. Just what's gone wrong with Andrew Vaughn? I can't believe that he hasn't turned out the way I thought he was going to.
You remember the movie Trouble with the Curve?
Yes.
At the end of the movie, they discover that this prep first baseman can demolish fastballs, but he can't hit a breaking pitch.
Yes.
That's Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn's that kid. Andrew Vaughn cannot hit a breaking pitch.
They look
He's
alike,
changing
too.
his stance again. Andrew Vaughn is changing his stance again in his 4th season in the major leagues, where now he's like standing upright. He can't hit breaking stuff. And like even Jim Callis at MLB.com, Jim and I have been like talking and doing podcasts together for a decade. And Jim Callis mentioned to me, he's like, I don't know why Andrew Vaughn stopped walking. His plate discipline has crashed. We thought that was going to stay from his days at Cal. That didn't happen. Then the excuses came in that, well, because he's playing out of defensive position, it's hurting him at the plate. Well, that wasn't the case last year. He was playing first base. And I mean, it's, to borrow a Gen Z phrase, it's so mid for Andrew Vaughn. Like 152 games, 21 homers and 30 doubles, a 258 batting average, 314 on base percentage and slugging 429. It's a 101 OPS plus. We're talking about first base here. This is supposed to be your slugger. This is the Chicago White Sox. They had Frank Thomas and Paul Konerko and Jose Abreu. This is the guy that's supposed to carry the torch. That's why with the way that Jake Berger, when he started hitting all those homers last year, it invited the conversation of, should Jake Berger be the long-term first baseman? And should the White Sox look to trade Andrew Vaughn? There's a lot of pressure on Andrew Vaughn coming to the season, because if he performs at these type of numbers again, it's not good enough. It's just not good enough. And makes me wonder, when you got like this upcoming draft, you got Nick Kurtz of Wake Forest, and you got Charlie Condon of Georgia. It makes me wonder, with this new front office for the White Sox, like how much longer they're going to stick with Andrew Vaughn, because I'm sorry, this is not good enough at first base in Major League Baseball. It's not good enough.
And Josh, we talked about that one side of the trade with Berger. I think we have to talk about the other side with the other Jake Eater. Once he got traded to the White Sox, it seemed like he was just a completely different player than he was with the Marlins. Again, coming off an injury, but it just seemed like almost instantly, it seemed like the Marlins, well, maybe they won the trade. But what was your reaction, or what should I say, to Jake Eater when he was getting his minor league starts, and how does he look this spring?
So the White Sox brought in Brian Bannister from the San Francisco Giants to be the director of pitching. We've been told that they're kind of going back to the drawing board with Jake Eater, and they're trying to get him to watch more film of when he was with Pensacola last year and try to erase everything that happened in Birmingham, which is the AA affiliate for the White Sox, and the Arizona Fall League. Like the Arizona Fall League was bad too. With the Birmingham Barons, 17 innings over 5 starts, 27 hits allowed, 22 earned runs, 15 walks to 22 strikeouts. I mean, the whip is approaching 3 during his time in AA, and didn't get much better at the Arizona Fall League. 6 appearances, 17 innings, 18 hits allowed, 12 earned runs allowed, 15 walks, and 16 strikeouts. So with I'm curious what they're going to do with Eater, because he wasn't one of the guys that they were bringing in early when pitchers and catchers report. They were focused more of their attention on Nick Nastrini, in which the White Sox acquired from Los Angeles Dodgers in one of the midseason trades last year. I think Nastrini's ahead of Jake Eater of making the major leagues. So I'm curious to learn more on what Bannister is going to try to do with Eater. We haven't seen Eater pitch much in spring training, but we are all focused on what type of adjustments that he'll need to make, because clearly something got lost on his way over to the White Sox organization, where it's like, we traded Jake Berger for this guy. Great move, Kenny Williams. So we'll see on how Eater does, because there's some pressure on him too to perform. The White Sox are going to have opportunities this year, especially when they do trade Dylan Cease eventually. Somebody within the White Sox farm system is going to have to step up and take up some starts this season. As everybody knows, like, you have between 8 to 10 guys that make starts for a major league team during the course of a season. And I think the White Sox are expecting that Eater does bounce back and be one of those guys that does pitch in the major leagues in 2024. But what Bannister is working on and what that looks like on the mound, we're still waiting to see.
That was, yeah, we knew counting down to the deadline, like that Kim Eng was seemingly on a mission to trade him for something. And the concern was, oh goodness, is she going to trade him for a rental just to make this final push? And all the way up until the deadline, there were some rumors out there. I don't want to get too far into it about like the other packages that were kind of on the table. And out of all those, the ability to get somebody that's not only so controllable but so good immediately, like Berger, that was such a sigh of relief. And we'll get you out of here with my flipped fish trivia question. It's good that Isaac checked out for a moment because he always ruins these. He's too good at them. Where we look at a player that played for the Marlins and for a second team during his career. This one, obviously, Marlins and a White Sox one. So I'm just going to show you a couple hints from this player's career.
Okay, a pitcher.
Is a right-handed pitcher. Oh, well, Isaac is back just in time. Yeah.
Oh man. Last game, 2018. Is this Matt Latos?
It's not Latos. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about it. We're going to go to our break. When we come back on the other side, we'll do the reveal of this flip fish pitcher. So stick with us.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
I am struggling. I try to erase the 2018 season from my memory.
Oh,
they lost 100 games that year. I'm drawing a blank.
Oh,
I mean, their last game was with the White Sox. Then
that's right.
Oh, I know who it is.
Who is it?
I think. Yeah, it's him. It's him.
Chris Volstead. Right.
6'8" was supposed to be the one hint that kind of gave it away.
Oh man,
6'8", 235.
Volstead.
Yeah, one of those players that was kind of equally underwhelming for both of these teams. He was a former first-round draft pick of the Marlins and tried to make it work in their rotation for a little while. Never really took off.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great one. See, I was kind of expecting like Juan Pierre. Like that's the first guy I had in my mind. Like that's what I was hoping to see. Like, yes, I got you guys. No, not the case.
No, but thanks a lot, Josh.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
We gotta have you back for the White Sox Marlins series in July.
Yeah, that's the first weekend in July after 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
July 5th.
Yeah. Let's see if Dylan Cease is still on the team.
Yeah.
All right.
See you guys later. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Josh.
it.
What a swell guy.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right. Now we can get into actual Marlins talk. We could talk about what we've seen. This is going to be, again, a bit condensed since first half talking some White Sox. But let's start off with the game that happened today with the Marlins. Isaac, can you talk to us a bit about the Marlins and the Houston Astros? Not the score. Don't look at the score, anybody. Talk to us about Eddie's first start.
I would love to, Daniel. Let's see. Yes, Edward Cabrera made his first start of the spring, and boy, did he look every bit as nasty as he did in that final month or so of last year's regular season. The changeup was working really well. He was throwing those low 90s changeups to hitters that they had no shot at getting to. Now, I do think it's worth noting that the Astros didn't exactly bring their A team down up to Jupiter, I should say, for this ball game, but still, nevertheless, those are major league ball players that Cabrera really set down in order most of the time. He threw a couple of curveballs in the middle of that bats, which I thought was interesting because he'd usually use it as a get me over pitch or sometimes as a swing and miss pitch to end at bats. But there he was using it as a second pitch in one of the at bats against Caratini. And then he was followed by the two-headed monster at the back end of the bullpen in Tanner Scott and Andrew Nardi. Those were more forgetful outings for both of them. Scott's stuff looked good. He just had some really tough luck, soft contact that left the infield, unfortunately, and then a sun-aided double in right field, allowed a run to score, and then Eli Villalobos just allowed everyone to score. And then with Andrew Nardi, velocity wasn't quite there yet. He's mentioned post-game that his slider needs a little bit of work right now. He wasn't able to use a splitter quite yet. So remember, just first outing of the first week of spring training for these guys. Relievers are always fickle, so there's plenty of time for them to get their SHIT on. And then the last guy who I want to mention is George Soriano. He perfect 2 innings out of the pen today for Miami. He is being stretched out as a starter. And yeah, 6 up, 6 down for him, if I remember correctly. And he was really lights out. I personally and Mel Stoudemire Jr. completely agreed with this take that he should be in the bullpen. He can be so versatile, whether he wants to give you the 7th inning or he wants to give you 3 to 4 innings out of the pen. He can do it all for you. So to me, he's best served in the bullpen. But like I said, at this point in spring training, they're just stretching everyone out just in case, because you never know what's going to happen. Braxton Garrett obviously off to a slow start this spring with his general body soreness. So they're probably just being safe with all these guys. But overall, not a ton to talk about offensively. Cabrera was great. Scott and Nardi were meh. George Soriano was excellent.
Yeah, and then just to add with Cabrera, I believe out of the starters that have made an appearance through the spring, Cabrera is actually the one who's had the most whiffs this spring. So that's good to see, especially as you mentioned, Isaac, with the curveball. I think that's where he had the most. Well, he had 1 whiff there, 6 with the changeup. So
with his changeup, he had 6 swinging strikes on 8 swings. I mean, that is as nasty as it gets with him. Yeah, this was the disclaimer is about the quality of the lineup that he was facing. The top 5 hitters in the Astros lineup were not there. It was no Altuve, no Bregman, no Kyle Tucker, no Jose Abreu, and no Yordan Alvarez. It's probably the most important one to mention. None of them were there. And the Astros have historically done this the last several years where those guys play very sparingly during the fake exhibition games going on. But otherwise, yeah, still, this is a baby step in the right direction. For anybody asking about the velocity on not just him, but everybody else, the velo was a little bit down for just about everybody compared to what normally you see in the regular season. For Eddie, he was averaging about 95 instead of 96. For Tanner Scott, he was averaging 96 instead of 97, but nothing super alarming. I told you guys this separately that I had this the reliever that came in for mop-up stuff in the 4th and 5th inning, Emmanuel Ramirez. I was not aware that person existed, and it's really hard to do that.
I've never heard of that name.
I follow the organization very closely. I usually have a good idea of every relevant minor leaguer that's in the organization. This guy, he signed as a minor league free agent a month ago. He didn't get an invite to spring training, to big league spring training. He's been on the backfields. He's 30 years old, and he came in under the radar. I didn't even notice the transaction come across.
I don't think there was a transaction.
It wasn't even a radar.
But apparently he went through all the necessary approval to pitch in the baseball game. I don't think it was a fan from the stands or anything like that. But you could have fooled me because I was not aware of you, sir, Mr. Emmanuel Ramirez. But I'm glad that he at least got his feet wet early in camp. This is when you see some of these fringier talents get into the mix.
And just add on with the velos, Nardi was at 94, 95, I guess, if you want to round it up. But yeah, everyone was kind of down, today.
Yeah, and offensively, like I said, there wasn't much to talk about, but the best hit ball all game was by Cody Morissette, opposite field booming double off the wall, which I thought was nice to see. I didn't know he had oppo power like that. I've always been a fan of. I had always been a fan of the hit tool. Obviously, it's been a struggle for him the last couple of years or year and a half in the lower levels and mid levels of the minors, but it was nice to see him barrel one up to the opposite field today.
Yeah, he's definitely someone who's dealt with injuries, especially I believe it was a leg injury. He had a broken leg, I think is what it was. Yeah, that was a scary injury, and we're set going into 2024. So we'll see what happens with him. He's gonna get a chance too, especially with a AA or AAA. He's gonna play a lot. So
yeah. For people watching that were there the first half of the show, I was planning to ask Josh about Avi Garcia because he spent half of his career with the White Sox. We were just so thorough on the other guys that we didn't really get into that situation. He wasn't playing today, right? Yeah, he was playing yesterday.
He did not play today. He was taking BP in the backfields with some of the other regulars like Arise and such.
Right.
Let's go ahead. I wanted to talk about some of the lesser known players on the roster, on the spring training roster, that are maybe catching the eyes of some people. In the chat, I have to talk about it. It seems like it happened the whole time. They want to know about Tristan Gray. They want to know how everyone else is doing. Kev, talk to us about Tristan Gray. He's been impressing so far during spring training, but realistically, does he have any shot to even sniff the roster?
Yeah, it's an interesting case of Tristan Gray because the profile speaks for itself. Power hitter with a very high strikeout percentage, could play you kind of everywhere around the field. So, yeah, but right now he's off to a good start in the spring. 2 home runs already. He's yet to strike out, I believe. So, well, once the stats get updated, I believe he had his first strikeout today. But he's looked good. There's no other way to put it. Now, can he make the roster? I don't really think so. I mean, he would have to have a Jordan Walker type spring like last season to really make the roster. But I think, we won't talk. Well, I think we're going to mention him later, but Trey Mancini has struggled, and Tristan Gray does play first base. So if Mancini continues the struggles and Gray or Johnston continue to hit, then you have yourself a conversation there. And maybe a little overreaction early on. It's 6 at bats for Mancini, but when you're 0 for 6 with 4 strikeouts, it's not the greatest look.
Yeah, a little bit of overreaction on a few of those things on Tristan Gray's power numbers so far, and with Trey Mancini's struggles, obviously. I would say maybe Gray is third in line for maybe that last bench spot if you were to place him first, because boy, did Skip Schumacher really speak very, very highly of Troy Johnson today. Mentioned many times, all he's done is hit, and he even admitted, hey, I know he wasn't happy with the way this offseason went for him, but all he wanted was a shot, and Skip said he's getting this shot right now. And I think he's a dark horse candidate to make this team, especially if Mancini's struggles continue. I think Troy will get a very well-deserved opportunity, and maybe he'll sneak on there. I wouldn't be shocked.
And on top of that, he played left field the other day, so they're giving him a good chance around everywhere. He's making the trip to Tampa and Clearwater both days, so he's going to get a good chance.
Do you believe he has a better shot of making it maybe than Trey Mancini? Because you mentioned his struggles, Kevin. Again, he struggled all of last year to the point where he got DFA'd and having to sign a minor league deal off, I believe, $14 million contract around there. But Kevin, does Troy have the same odds as Trey, or are they relatively in the same boat?
I don't know, man. It's too early. Right now, you would have to think just the way each player is played individually. Troy would be the guy to add to the roster, but the way Skip spoke about Mancini, Isaac, half your head is cut off. But anyways, the way Skip has spoken about Mancini is very high. He's mentioned that he's a good leader, a great story. He's won the World Series. He is essentially another Yuli Gurriel in terms of the personality you're going to get, the English-speaking Yuli Gurriel, I guess.
But the defense,
if you want to say that, and he's no offense to Troy, he's a better defender than Troy. So you have to tell yourself those qualities. But if Troy could hit, you're going to have to sacrifice some defense, and they already have. Look at the left side of the infield for the Marlins. That already says enough. I mean, and I would think Troy would make this roster over Mancini if Troy continues to hit the way he has, and Mancini continues to struggle. Now, I'm not saying I'm rooting for Mancini not to make this roster. I think if he does have a good spring, he would make it. You never root against the guy, but Troy deserves it, man. He really does. He hit over 300 last year, 2020 season. You can't ask for much more than that at this point. Barely striking out. Now he's even stealing bases. Already showed it during the spring early on. I mean, he's already having a better spring than he did last season, and I don't think Troy will be in the first round of cuts. I'll tell you that much.
Right. I just want to remind people about what the roster outlook is. It's pretty much set until there's an injury or unless something bold happens. This is it. This is the 13 position players. It's Bethancourt and Fortes. It's Tim Anderson, Arise, Bell, Birdie, Berger. Brujan is out of options. It's him. And then it's Jazz, DLC, Avi, who's under contract, Nick Gordon, and Jeezy. And that's it is for the moment. It is there has to be some significant occurrence in order for Troy or Mancini or Tristan Gray, even one of them, to get on. Something needs to change over the course of this next month to create that opening there. I'd say like the early first impressions of Bruhan are not great, but they did trade multiple prospects in that deal to get him. And I think it'd have to take a pretty awful next month for them to say that, to punt on that for trading like from the little prospect depth that they have and DFA him and hope he like clears waivers or something. That'd be a pretty dramatic turn. With Avi, yeah, I just it's the same.
He's gonna be there. He's
Yeah,
gonna
I
be
think
there.
he's gonna. I think he's gonna be there at the start of the season. People know how I feel about that. I co-sign a lot of what Peter Pratt said on his Lockdown Marlins episode. I'm not going to record my own episode in that same tone and with that same language, but like, yeah, if you just analyze who he is as a player each of the last couple of years, like the flaws in his game are things that I just don't see being fixable. I think the likelihood of him like turning around and being even a career average version of himself just seem really unlikely with the way that his plate discipline is and just his inability to make contact in general. So but either way, that's a reality that they're dealing with.
And just the other name to mention, there is always the chance that we saw with the Rays, the Marlins may go with 3 catchers. I mean, they brought in Kirk Casale. I really doubt they're going to have Kirk Casale stay in AAA for a full-length season. He's worked with young pitching staffs before. We've seen the Reds. The Giants have had their guys for a couple young pitchers come up and down their system. So it wouldn't shock me if they make a move and bring in Kirk Casale to be a third catcher there. I mean, Bethancourt's gotten off to a really nice start, including the Caribbean Series. He's caught well for the most part. Nick Fortes, we'll see. Not too much there yet, but he did get opportunities, I believe, yesterday to be a DH. Not yesterday, the day before to be a DH. So they're giving him at bats. But yeah, Bethancourt and Casale with Fortes, not the worst defensive catching outlook for the Marlins right now. But yeah, there's always a chance they go with 3 guys, or we'll see. I mean, Vidal Brujan certainly hasn't made the case to make this roster early on, but defensively hasn't looked horrible either. I mean, he didn't look that bad, but right now the bat's the issue.
Right. And
just because LMF is begging about Josh Simpson, I mean, he was on my previous roster projection entering spring training games, and in both of his appearances this spring, he's really struggled. And the first one, he really struggled with his control, and even in the second one, his velo is significantly down by like more than 2 miles per hour from where it was last year. So that was a kind of discouraging change of pace because he was in live BP and in previous bullpen sessions, like he was looking really encouraging. His swing and miss ability is really tantalizing. And he is, to me, like he could be at his best. He's a better version of Stephen Okert. But as of like this past week, he is not the best version of himself right now. So that one will just have to continue to monitor as the spring goes on.
No, so I'll say this. It's only been two appearances, guys. Let's relax. There's guys who've gone off to bad starts and they get to go on, late into the spring. Skip has spoken highly of the guy. He's not just gonna say that to pump him up or just say it because he wants to. If he speaks highly of a guy, which he's done with Troy many times, and now Josh Simpson, there's a reason why. Give it time. Let him get adjusted to this. I don't know how many spring starts or appearances Simpson has made prior to this, but I don't think it's very much. So and I do believe this is his first invite to camp. So give him time. I think that's what we'll say. He made it up last year. He didn't pitch, but evidently this organization as a whole likes him. And I know it's a new regime, but
yeah,
they like him.
How about Mr. Will Banfield? Again, another guy who's impressed. Had 2 walks today. I believe he hasn't struck out so far this spring. With Will Banfield, is that a guy that can also, I don't want to say crack the major league roster right away or anything like that, but this season, could we potentially see, hey, Will Banfield's on the roster mid-July, mid-August? Is that a guy that could potentially come up? Has he impressed the staff that much?
With Will Banfield, the issue right now is just you want to see consistency. This past year was his first real consistent offensive season. I believe he had over 20 home runs. He had a great year of power, but that's really it. He only showed off the power, not too much contact. You got to see a little bit of both, and he's shown it, as you mentioned, Daniel, 2 walks today. He's yet to strike out. He's hitting 400. It's a good showing for him thus far, and he's a good defensive catcher. So I don't think he'll crack the roster. He may be in the first or second round of cuts, but he's certainly making a good first impression for this organization. He only played in one game before, this spring training. So good to see Will Banfield out there. And, a lot of these prospects too. Jacob Berry had a two-hit day on Tuesday against the Mets. Yeah, so he also did not make a very good play at third base.
Ooh, right about to ask that.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys mentioned Banfield, because Skip Schumacher was asked about Will Banfield this morning by Kyle Seeloff, and Skip said verbatim, "We love this kid. He's got the elite leadership quality to be a major league catcher. There's no doubt that he can throw as well as anybody, and he's becoming a better hitter. And that last year, like you mentioned, Kevin, was a huge step in the right direction, and not just for the power, but just understanding how to hit and all of that. I think he's so important. Obviously, hey, I hope he makes it. He was chosen in my call-up contest draft. But yeah, I would say for the Casali signing, obviously, probably puts him a little bit back in the depth chart, but he's
fourth catcher right now, you would say, on the Marlins organization?
He's clearly their top catching prospect in the system, which not saying much, but he is obviously that, and he's probably next man up after Casali.
Yeah, and to go there, let's finish things off. We can go on a tangent on this, on one spring training overreaction that maybe you've had so far this spring. Kevin, we'll start with you. Are there any reactions that you're maybe just a little, I don't want to say over time, but just one overreaction you've had so far?
I really like what I saw from AJ Puck on Tuesday. Really good stuff. He's making a good case early on. That was my overreaction. I was thinking about it because I was going to tell you about this too. I was like, we should do this, and I'm glad we are. AJ Puck may be a decent starter at the major league level. Give him a couple more innings to see what he's got. Hey, it's an overreaction. It's an overreaction.
15 and a half starts for AJ Puck, Kevin.
I'm taking the under, but
there we go.
I think he has a chance to be a decent starter. He did it before in the minor leagues. He did it very well at college. So, who says he can't do it one more time? But again, that's why they're overreactions.
Right. And I do think that one is really fascinating and worth talking about further. He does have, it is early. And so what I reiterate is that we really don't know anything about these guys as rotation candidates until they're stretched out enough to go multiple times through a lineup. It doesn't matter how dominant he looks in 2 innings, because that's not the job. That's something he could do as a reliever before, and that's something that is important, but it's just not very revealing until he faces the same batters multiple times in a game, and he has to use his full arsenal of pitches, which is it's a bigger arsenal than he had last year, because he is working in that changeup splitter thing that we're not sure exactly which one it is at the moment, and he's added a cutter in addition to his sweeper. But that was the first thing that came to my mind too, is about how fascinated I am by it. How I'm reminded that even last year, even though he was a great reliever at times, that as Craig Mish has reported, the questions about how he recovers quickly, especially pitching on back-to-back days, that was a concern when he was traded to the Marlins in the first place. And they had him doing that a little bit last year with some mixed results, but it's something that may have contributed to him missing time on the IL and then having that big slump in the second half of the season. So if he can't do that, then his ceiling as a reliever is a little bit limited if we feel like he's not going to be the same guy in those situations. So I think that just makes it really, I've come around to feeling that this is certainly the smart thing to do is to find out. And we're going to find out soon, not in his next start, but probably the one after that, once he goes, 4 innings. I think that is when you're going to get a clear idea about whether or not he's actually one of their top 5 guys. And if he isn't, he does have minor league options remaining. That is something they could do. If they say this is going to work, we love these other 5 guys right now. So just stand by at AAA and be the next man up. That's something that when you want to be an elite pitching staff, it's not just about those first 5 guys. And it's not always that you don't have to feel the need to trade one of them to get something else. They're going to need somebody like him over the course of the season. And so we do have to wait and see a little bit more, but I'm right on the same page where that is the one thing that is most top of mind for me since camp started.
Yeah, you'll need the numbers like Josh mentioned earlier. You'll need 8 to 10 guys that will start for you in the season. And if AJ Puk could be 6, if he could be 7, as a guy there for the Marlins in the season, then you take that when you can, because that's you need those type of numbers. Just to read what Josh said, finish things off. Eli, Isaac, your overreaction so far this spring.
Go ahead, Eli. You go first.
Yeah, well, besides that, I would say
There has to be something.
It's
Troy
right, well,
Johnson makes it over Trey Mancini.
I'll go. My first overreaction. I'll have a positive one and a negative one. The positive one is Edward Cabrera, baby.
Oh,
I mean, come on. You know how happy I'm about this guy. 0 walks in 2 innings pitched. It's his first spring training where he's not dealing with visa issues. He's not dealing with any injuries. He's got a full spring with Mel Stoudemire Jr. coming up. He's going to be in this rotation. And if he just walks 3.5 guys instead of 5.5 guys, I'm telling you, this guy's an all-star. I'm a very big Edward Cabrera fan. And the negative one, Jose Devers, man. This guy's 0 for 8 so far this spring. I was high on him too. Sugar, man. I thought he was gonna come out and just rake and slice line drives everywhere. But slow start for him. I think he'll be fine. But I'm a little bit disappointed with Mr. Jose Devers. He was also a late arrival to camp, not visa issues, a little bit of some other issues, but I think he'll be fine. He'll be getting a lot of playing time. I believe he's traveling to Tampa. So those are my 2 overreactions.
You put some weight on too, which is pretty good.
He looks bulky. He looks big. Still very, very young, guys. We keep forgetting he was rushed to the big leagues like no one I've ever seen before. So just keep that in mind. He's the last guy standing from that Giancarlo Stanton trade. I think he's got something to prove, and he's the guy that can replace Brujan in a second whenever that fails, if it does.
I think if I had to pick a real overreaction, I think that Matt, tell me if I pronounce it wrong. Andriese,
right?
Matt Andriese, the pitcher. Andriese. Whatever. I believe he could potentially make the bullpen. I think he might be the next guy up in the bullpen. I think he's really impressed me so far this spring, and I don't know if he's impressed you guys, but what I'm seeing from him and giving him also multiple innings, 2 innings, maybe they're again to stretch him. But I've been impressed with him. Obviously, maybe not putting him out there as a starter, but as a bullpen guy, I believe he's been pretty good. He's had 3 strikeouts his last 2 outings each time. I'm just looking at it right now. I've seen some of his stuff. It's impressed me a bit. Probably no one to even fly about, but a real overreaction will be, I think he's impressed me a lot.
I forgot to share the Tristan Gray stat that I had yesterday, that since the start of last spring training, in the spring training games last year and this year, second highest OPS in all of baseball among guys that actually got some decent at-bats in spring. Second behind Matt Olson. Matt Olson has been the best spring training hitter by OPS last spring and this spring combined. Tristan Gray, number 2.
Oh. Is that the overreaction?
Well, I guess that's not an overreaction. It's kind of the opposite of that, because it just reminds you that
it's a reaction.
As much as he did last spring with the Rays, he barely got up at all, and he struck out like a third of the time at AAA last year, and he got outrighted. Just a reminder, like, he could have been claimed off waivers by anybody. He wasn't even claimed off waivers at the end of last season. So even though he's making a great first impression right now, I don't know if a whole lot has changed since then. But that's probably the most popular overreaction I've seen, is people getting hyped about Tristan Gray.
I think to end things off, Kevin, a question you'll be the most suited one to answer that. Just how Thomas and Noble have been looking.
So no, I've only been able to watch Noble Meyer. Unfortunately, Thomas White's start came in during one of the spring training games themselves, but Noble Meyer looks really good. The elevated fastball looks good. I know, Isaac, you were able to watch, and we spoke to Victor Mesa Jr. He mentioned the fastball, and he went up to Noble and he told me he has to throw that fastball a lot more. The breaking stuff looks real good as well. Got some swing and miss on there. But the last time I watched Noble, he got roughed up a little bit. But aside from that, good stuff. We're hearing good stuff from Thomas White as well. 97 is, from the fastball on his end. But Yeah, those are right now the two best pitching prospects in the organization, and I'm glad they're having a good spring. Yeah, I mean, I spoke to Griffin Conan as well. He said Noble's got really good stuff. From a guy that strikes out 40%, I don't know how much he could tell you, but it's good stuff thus far from Noble, specifically from who I've watched, I believe, once. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like Noble's a little bit more raw than White is at the moment.
That as
Obviously, I do think Noble is the number one guy in this system. Thomas White a close number two, but just he's not Yuri Perez, he's not Jose Fernandez. Noble has a lot of work to do before he gets to Double A at least. So just keep that in mind. He's a very, very young kid. That slider is excellent. The rising fastball is excellent. He's just leaving them hanging at times. In just his second inning of work. Obviously, he's very early in spring training, but he's very young, very raw. But I'm very excited to watch him develop.
And the Marlins will be on TV again tomorrow, playing New York Yankees up in Tampa. Ryan Weathers will get to start.
Is it on TV?
Well, I think it's on. What they're listing it as, I think the Yankees are doing it only through that. I think they're doing a TV broadcast, but they're not even putting it on their main cable network. They're putting it on the Yes app. But I think if you have MLB TV, you should be able to stream it, because there wouldn't even be the Marlins themselves aren't doing a show, so we should have people should have access to that. And we haven't even talked about Tim Anderson making his spring debut in the game tomorrow. That is,
I was gonna say that in front of Josh. He is making the trip. He's penciled in, is what Skip said, to make his spring debut tomorrow.
graphic.
I love it.
Luis Arai. Great editing there, Mr. Eli.
Why does his head look so big?
That's sick, man. Sick. A1 right there. But he will be making his first visit tomorrow. So I'm glad it's televised. We'll get all the updates live from us. If you have MLB TV, like Eli said, you'll be able to watch it. Luis Arise is also expected to be in that lineup. Ryan Weathers will get the start, and former third overall pick from the 2020 draft, Max Meyer, will be pitching. I think he will follow Ryan Weathers right after. He will pitch 2 innings. Max Meyer will, and that's going to be the first time Skip sees him pitch live. Obviously, Peter Bendix see him pitch live for the first time. Big day tomorrow, and then a couple days after that, someone else is going to pitch, but we'll keep that a secret for now.
That's been held back for a couple days now. He's been
pushed back, but it's worth the wait.
Getting a couple more days in the treadmill to really get him ready into game shape. But we'll keep that out. You can always follow us. You can follow Isaac, Kevin, myself, Eli, Noah, Alex Krutchik, Lewis, everyone on staff. I'm sure we'll have updates for that game tomorrow. But of course, I'm Daniel for Eli, Kevin, Isaac, for Josh of Sox Machine. Please go follow him on Twitter. Great follow there if you're interested on what the White Sox are doing. This is FOF Live, presented by Burger and Hicks. Go Fish.